The human who captivated an alien princess, but danger lurks. James Ashford never expected that an evening walk through the quiet hills of Yorkshire would change his life, let alone the fate of an entire galactic dynasty. A former Royal Air Force pilot who had turned his back on the thrill of combat after a career-ending injury, James had retreated to a simpler life, one filled with the scent of wet grass, the constant hum of a kettle, and the solitude of the moors. He'd bought a modest stone cottage near an abandoned RAF hangar that he had slowly converted into a private workshop, where he tinkered with drone prototypes and hybrid propulsion engines, far removed from the politics of the modern world. But that night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the wind carried a strange charge, the skies tore open with a brilliant arc of silver flame, and a sound that seemed both distant and deafening echoed through the valley. James instinctively ducked, heart pounding, and looked up just in time to see a shimmering, otherworldly craft streak across the sky and vanish behind the hill. His military instincts kicked in before logic could intervene. Pocketing his phone and grabbing the old torch from his backpack, James sprinted toward the crash site, vaulting fences and dodging gorse bushes until the scent of scorched earth met his nostrils. The grass was flattened in a wide circle, and in its center lay the craft, sleek obsidian and still pulsing with alien energy. He approached cautiously, half expecting a defense turret to spring out, but the vessel was clearly damaged, its underbelly scorched, and a side panel buckled open. That's when he saw her. She was collapsed beside the open hatch, her figure, both unfamiliar and breathtaking. Her skin shimmered with a faint iridescence like moonlight on water, and her hair floated around her head in defiance of gravity, as if charged with static or perhaps powered by something far more exotic. Her eyes fluttered open as he drew near, luminescent, multifaceted like gems carved from distant nebulae. Despite the severity of her injuries, her gaze locked onto his with a calm regality that made him stop in his tracks. Then she spoke. Not with her mouth, but through a pendant around her neck that vibrated softly and emitted perfect neutral English. "Do not be alarmed. I mean no harm. I require sanctuary. My enemies hunt me." James had faced jet fighters and missiles, but nothing had ever frozen him like this moment. Her voice was gentle but commanding, her words soaked in urgency. Without thinking, he pulled off his jacket and knelt beside her. "You're hurt. Can you stand?" She hesitated, then nodded faintly. Together they staggered away from the crash, James helping her along the unlit path toward his hangar. He knew better than to bring a potentially dangerous alien to a populated area. His hangar was secure, shielded, and equipped with more technology than most MI6 field offices. Once inside, he laid her on a cushioned workbench, and the pendant began to glow again. "I am Princess Elira of the House Virelian, rightful heir to the Nebulon throne. I fled my planet after a coup attempt. My uncle seeks to control the galactic throne through deceit and tyranny. I carry the only surviving link to the royal bloodline." James blinked. Princess? Galactic throne? It sounded absurd, yet everything about her presence screamed truth. The pendant translated while also conveying subtle emotional tones, and what he heard, what he felt, was sincerity laced with exhaustion. She winced and reached into a pouch at her waist, withdrawing a small orb-shaped device. With a soft hum, it projected a holographic interface showing damage to her vessel. "My propulsion stabilizers are offline. I need access to alloy composites and energy cells, materials with silicon resonance and high ion tolerance." James stared, trying to piece together her alien tech jargon. Then he caught himself. Wait. You crash land on Earth, ask me for help, and expect me to find interstellar hardware in rural Yorkshire?" She tilted her head. "You are a pilot. Your neurochemical profile suggests engineering proficiency, and your structure," she gestured vaguely to the hangar, "implies technological curiosity. I had few landing options. You were optimal." James almost laughed, but his nerves were shot. He ran a hand through his hair. "You scanned my brain?" She gave a faint smile. "Only partially. It was necessary for landing precision. Had I not, I would have impacted the village north of here. This location was ideal, isolated, shielded. James sighed. Well, then I suppose I should thank you for not vaporizing the local pub. Over the next hours, James worked alongside Elira. He was amazed how quickly she adapted to his tools, integrating her futuristic data cores with his Earth-built equipment. She corrected his wiring without arrogance, taught him about interdimensional torque fields with the ease of a university lecturer, and drank his tea like it was the elixir of life. He couldn't help but admire her poise, her brilliance, and the sadness she tried to hide. While they worked, he learned more. Her people had once been peacekeepers, diplomats, and innovators. But internal factions had corrupted the royal council, and when her parents, true visionaries, mysteriously died, her uncle seized power. Her escape was orchestrated by loyalists who believed she could restore the Virelion legacy. She hadn't meant to come to Earth, but a last-minute sabotage forced her emergency detour. James found himself torn. He had always prided himself on being grounded, skeptical of the fantastical. Yet Elira was real. Her ship was real. And the ache in his chest when she winced from her injuries was real. As dawn approached, her ship sat partially restored within the hangar, concealed beneath the rusted camouflage James had built years ago. She rested in the makeshift infirmary he had fashioned from spare bedding and aviation cushions. Before she slept, she looked at him with those shimmering eyes. Your kindness, it was not expected. Among my people, trust is a currency long devalued. James sat beside her, watching the sky lighten through the open rafters. Maybe it's time. Your people rediscovered it. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. In the distance, a fox barked. The world was unaware that a princess from among the stars now lay hidden in the heart of Yorkshire. And James Ashford, a man who had given up on adventure, had just taken the first step into a conflict that would span galaxies. But for now, in that quiet hangar under the paling sky, only two things mattered. She was safe, and he was no longer alone. Elira awoke to the low hum of human technology, primitive, yet oddly comforting. The hangar was quiet, lit by strips of LED lighting James had rigged along the rafters, giving the place a subdued glow that danced across the metal hull of her repaired ship. She sat up slowly, the aches in her muscles dulled by the regenerative gel James had patched together with her help, using plant enzymes and some crude approximations of her own medical kit. He was asleep nearby, curled awkwardly in an old leather chair, head tilted, arms folded. The sight of him, this Earthman with a bruised past and a mind sharp enough to decipher quantum entropy from a car battery, warmed something in her. She hadn't meant to trust him, but trust, like the stars, sometimes appeared where it was least expected. When he woke, blinking against the morning light, he immediately asked about her ship. Elira smirked. Still needs a phase ion regulator. I've adjusted the converter to mimic the core functions, but it won't last more than a few jumps. James stretched, cracking his back. You'll need more than Yorkshire scrap to get that, so what's the plan? Her expression turned solemn. We lay low. For now, if my uncle's mercenaries tracked my emergency warp, they may already be scanning. This sector, she paused. We may have only days, maybe hours. James didn't flinch. Instead, he opened a metal crate and pulled out a device, his own design, built for drone signal obfuscation. We can boost your ship's cloaking field using this. It won't hold forever, but it'll muddy their scans, and we can rig some sensors to watch the skies. That day passed in a blur of work, both human and alien, as they turned the hangar into a hybrid command center. Elira patched communication systems while James configured Earth-style redundancies. They spliced together a hybrid propulsion diagnostic tool using his old telemetry equipment and her quantum nodes. Between repairs, they talked. She taught him about her homeworld, Virelith, a moon-ringed planet bathed in constant auroras, where cities floated above crystalline oceans. He shared stories of Earth's wars, of flying missions over desert sands and black sea nights, of the silence that followed after a jet landed and the pilot walked away, changed. They were from different worlds, yet they spoke in the same language. Survival, duty, and the fragile strength of second chances. Elira began to laugh more. James began to smile without thinking. But late that evening, a sharp beep sliced through their calm. One of the orbital sensors James had set up had tripped. They ran to the monitor. A faint signature and unfamiliar configuration hovered just outside Earth's upper atmosphere. Not a satellite, not anything man-made. James stared. "They found you." Elira's face hardened. "No, they found us." As she moved toward her ship, James stopped her. "Running won't help now. If they scanned this place once, they'll scan it again. We need to outsmart them." She turned, her regal presence still intact despite the fear behind her eyes. "And how do you propose we do that?" He looked at the ship, then back at her. "We give them a trail to follow, one that leads far from here, a decoy." Her eyes widened with understanding. "My damaged core, if we rig it with a signal amplifier and launch it into orbit." James nodded. "They'll chase a ghost and buy us time." The night deepened as they worked. Under a sky full of stars, they launched the decoy. As it blinked into the sky like a second comet, Elira stood beside James. "You risk everything, and yet you ask for nothing." James looked out toward the horizon. "You gave me something first, a reason to wake up excited again." They didn't speak after that, but something passed between them, a silent bond forged in solder, adrenaline, and mutual trust. In that hangar in the hills of Yorkshire, hidden among stars and secrets, their story had only just begun. The morning sun cast a golden hue over the Yorkshire hills, but inside the converted RAF hangar, the atmosphere was tense and electric. The decoy had worked, for now, but both James and Elira knew the clock was ticking. The enemy was out there, and they would not be fooled forever. Elira moved through the hangar with focused precision, her gown replaced by a sleek flight suit of shifting hues that adapted to its surroundings like a chameleon. James watched her from across the room, marveling at how seamlessly she balanced grace with tactical awareness. Her every move was a reminder of the lineage she bore, a warrior princess bred in the heart of a civilization light years beyond anything Earth could imagine. But even she could not mask the growing weight of urgency that settled between them. James spent the day reinforcing the hangar's defenses. He rigged motion-triggered drones to patrol the perimeter and reconfigured an old radar unit to act as an early warning system, now augmented with Elira's spectral frequency scanners. "If they come through the clouds, we'll see them before they see us," he said, fastening a final cable to a high-gain antenna mounted on the roof. Elira joined him, her expression unreadable. "They will not approach openly. Assassins of the Black Meridian favor shadows, not storms." James paused. "Sounds charming." She didn't smile. "They were once our royal guard, sworn to protect the throne. My uncle corrupted them, turned their oaths into contracts, for death." As night fell, the hangar transformed again. By James's hand, it became a sanctuary fortified by human ingenuity and alien foresight. The two of them worked in silent synergy, minds syncing, as if they had known each other for years. It was James who broke the silence. "What happens if we win? Say you make it back and reclaim the throne. What then?" Elira looked at him, her eyes distant. "I would rebuild what my family stood for, but peace does not come from bloodlines. It must be forged, earned." She hesitated. "And you? Would you return to your old life?" James didn't answer right away. "Maybe, but something tells me that life doesn't fit anymore." At midnight, a strange pulse hit the sensors, not strong enough to be a ship, but consistent, rhythmic. Elira's brow furrowed. "That's a signal relay, subspace-based. They're trying to triangulate me through the planetary crust." James blinked. "You can do that?" She nodded. "With the right tools, they must have left a dormant trace when I crash-landed. It's activating now." Immediately, they sprang into action. Elira climbed into the cockpit of her partially repaired ship, rerouting energy from the auxiliary engines to create a noise pulse to distort the trace. Meanwhile, James rewired his drone fleet to emit overlapping heat signatures to create false positives for any scanning from orbit. It was a desperate strategy, but desperation had become their new normal. The pulse grew stronger, peaking just as a low rumble shuddered through the earth. The lights flickered. James steadied himself against a support beam. That wasn't just a scan. Elira's eyes widened. They've fired a spike charge, a precision kinetic probe. It's going to punch through to this location. She leapt from the cockpit. We have to go now. But James was already moving. No, we hold the line. He sprinted to the far end of the hangar, grabbing a device that resembled a cross between a car battery and a satellite dish. You remember when I told you I'd been working on signal dampeners? Elira narrowed her gaze. That prototype you shelved? James grinned. It's unstable, but if I anchor it near the impact zone, it might confuse the probe's telemetry long enough for them to miss us by a few hundred meters. She grabbed his arm. You won't survive that kind of energy exposure. He looked at her, a softness behind his resolute stare. We're running out of places to hide. If I don't try, we both die. Let me do this. She didn't release him immediately. Her fingers lingered, her expression torn between reason and instinct. Then with a reluctant nod, she handed him a thin silver bracer. Wear this. It will shield your vitals for a short time. James bolted out into the night, the cold wind slapping his face, guided by the tremors beneath his feet and the pulse. On his handheld scanner, he reached the predicted impact site and buried the dampener just as a blinding beam of energy lanced down from the sky. The force sent him flying, the world reduced to light and sound in 1,000 fractal sparks. But the bracer held. Barely. Dazed, he staggered back toward the hangar as Elira rushed to meet him, catching him just before he collapsed. You idiot, she whispered. You beautiful, reckless idiot. They returned to the hangar, shaken but alive. The spike had missed by less than 20 meters, embedding itself in the moor with a crater that steamed and hissed like a broken furnace. The dampener had fried, but it had done its job. The signal had been lost. For now the hunters were blind again. Inside, James reclined on a bench, his chest rising and falling in exhausted rhythm. Elira sat beside him, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. That was reckless, she said, and brave. He gave a crooked smile. Yeah, well, what's royalty without a little drama? They laughed, tired, breathless laughter that dissolved into silence. For a moment, the war beyond the stars faded, and it was just them in the dark, finding solace in each other's presence. Elira rested her head on his shoulder. James, she said softly, you don't know what this means to me. You could have run. You didn't. He looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. You landed in my life like a meteor. What else could I do but catch fire? Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the struggles of a fallen princess and an ex-pilot from Earth. But in that moment, inside that hidden hangar, two souls from distant worlds were no longer alone, and as they leaned against each other, the shadows from the void crept ever closer, waiting to strike again. The night stretched long over the moors, and while Earth slept under a veil of silence, deep within the fabric of space a rift began to open, slight at first like a shimmer of heat haze in the distance, but soon splitting reality with the deafening hiss of torn dimensions. Elira woke with a jolt, her senses igniting before the sensors even confirmed the anomaly. James was already up, his fingers dancing over the console, eyes fixed on the holographic display showing a swelling crimson rupture in low orbit. They're here, he said, voice flat but thick with urgency. She nodded, already reaching for her weapons. The Black Meridian had found them at last. Within minutes, the skies over Yorkshire burned with unnatural color, aurora-like tendrils spreading outward, from the rupture like the arms of a vengeful god, and through it came their pursuers, not just hunters now, but a full battalion of elite enforcers, ships shaped like blades and shadows, cloaked in quantum invisibility that barely held against Elira's sensor grid. James and Elira moved, in tandem, uploading defense protocols, activating the hangar's automated turrets, the walls echoing with mechanical whirs and loading clicks. The ground beneath them trembled as kinetic landers broke the atmosphere and hit the fields with seismic force, carving trenches into the soil. James fired the first salvo, targeting the lead craft with a barrage of EMP disruptors rigged from salvaged parts and alien tech. The ship faltered, blinking out of cloaking as sparks danced across its hull, but the others adjusted instantly, adapting as though anticipating every move. They weren't just fast, they were learning. Elira took to the air, her suit's boosters carrying her into the fray. Blades of pure energy formed along her arms, slicing through the wind and striking with surgical precision. For a moment she was light incarnate, moving with the grace of a comet and the fury of a dying star. James, grounded but no less determined, coordinated strikes from below, guiding drone swarms and reprogrammed satellites into suicide runs against the enemy. But even with their brilliance, it was not enough. One ship broke through, landing hard near the hangar. From it emerged a figure, clad in armor darker than void, a face masked by a helm that rippled with psionic energy. Elira froze. Valor, she breathed. Her cousin. Once a prince. Now the Black Meridian's executioner. He approached slowly, sword in hand, each step marking a beat in the war drum cadence of destiny. Surrender, Elira, he said, his voice reverberating like thunder underwater. You've run long enough. She stepped forward, blades at the ready. I run no more. They clashed, lightning and steel, thought and instinct, the air around them warping from the sheer force of their power. Sparks flew as their weapons collided, each blow sending shockwaves through the battlefield. James watched, torn between awe and anguish, knowing he couldn't help, not here. His focus shifted back to the control board. The rupture in the sky was stabilizing, too stable. They were opening a gate, not just to send reinforcements, but to bring the throne itself. The Black Meridian wasn't just hunting Elira. They were relocating the capital of her corrupted empire to Earth. In that moment, everything shifted. The mission was no longer just survival, it was prevention of galactic colonization. James made the call. He overrode the containment failsafes on Elira's ship and primed its core for overload. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but if they could collapse the rift before it fully formed, they might just sever the link forever. Elira sensed what he'd done, even mid-battle. As she parried Valor's blade, she called to James telepathically through their shared link. You'll die. He answered with a clarity that shook her soul. Not if you finish him. End this. With a scream of anguish and fury, she unleashed a surge of power so intense it shattered Valor's defenses and knocked him unconscious. She turned, skyward, flying at speeds that blurred the world beneath her, reaching the ship just as the core peaked. James was waiting, already bleeding from the strain. She grabbed him, flung them both from the cockpit as the ship surged upward, then detonated. The blast tore through the sky, shredding the rupture with a scream of light and energy that echoed into space. The Black Meridian fleet fractured and fell, their connection severed, their purpose lost. And then silence. The aftermath was wind and ash, dawn breaking over a scorched battlefield. Elira and James lay side by side, alive but changed, staring at the sun as it climbed higher, a symbol of new beginnings. The galaxy would not forget what happened that day, and neither would Earth. The war was far from over, but for now, they had won. Together.